and discuss the certification component of the ENERGY STAR process. This webinar is being given by MET Laboratories. MET is a leader in the testing of electrical and electronic equipment for environmental hardiness, product safety, electromagnetic compatibility, and energy efficiency. MET operates world-class labs in Baltimore, Maryland, Santa Clara and Union City, California, Austin, Texas, and also runs operations in China, Korea, and Taiwan. This webinar will run about 30 minutes with an additional 15 minutes for questions and answers. Due to the number of registrants, all attendees will have their phones muted. If you have a question, please type it in the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel. We will attempt to answer all questions at the end. If you are having technical difficulties, you can contact us the same way, and we will try to resolve it quickly. Today's webinar is being presented by Sam Tate, MET's ENERGY STAR Program Manager. At this point, I will hand over the presentation to Sam.
Thank you, Barnaby, for the introduction. Our webinar today will focus on the ENERGY STAR testing and certification. First of all, a quick overview of what this webinar would entail. We'll go over the testing and the qualification testing process, and go over a typical specifications and test method, and after, go over the certification process itself, and detail the relationship between first-party test labs and the certification bodies, as well as verification and challenge testing. The ENERGY STAR program has evolved over the years, and before, manufacturers or partners were able to test products, submit data to the EPA. The EPA then reviews the test data and then certify the product as ENERGY STAR. Starting January this year, the EPA changed the rules to a third-party certification. And in this process now, manufacturers are supposed to test product at a third-party lab, which has to be EPA recognized, and also must have an ISO 17025 accreditation by an EPA recognized accreditation body. Manufacturers or partners can also test their product in their own lab, that is if it's EPA recognized and has an 17025 accreditation by an accreditation body. And the third option is for manufacturers to actually participate in a witness test lab program or a supervised manufacturer's test lab program, which has to be under one of the certification bodies that is recognized by the EPA. And under this program, the manufacturer's lab will actually have to be audited by the accreditation, by the certification body, the 17025 guideline. The certification bodies in this new program will have to review the test report and certify qualifying products for ENERGY STAR. The certification bodies will then also upload data to the EPA for the manufacturer's product to be uploaded on the QP list on the EPA website. The CBs or the certification bodies will then also perform verification and challenge testing after the certification, and also review any product changes and retest where possible. Now, the first part of this third-party certification process is actually performing the test to make sure the product actually is Energy Star compliant. First, you have to identify the product category and the specific Energy Star requirement for your product. Once that is done, you also have to identify the test method and requirement for your particular product. An example is for imaging product, where you have two test methods depending on the type of product. So you have the operational mode or the typical energy consumption under the Energy Star requirement based on the size or type of equipment under imaging. The next thing you want to consider is the product configuration or the equipment and the test configuration. Now, if you intend to qualify a family of products, then you have to present a highly configured member of that family for testing. And that's for computers and imaging products. Now, for servers, if you intend to qualify a family of products, you have to test the maximum and minimum configuration. For telephones, battery charging systems, TVs, and displays, you can test any member of the product, family. For vending machines, there are no product family qualifications for that product category for Energy Star. So if you do have several models and the different product families, you will have to test all the modules under the product family. The next item you want to consider is the sample size. There is one product required for testing computers, servers, imaging equipment, telephones, vending machines, TVs, and displays. Now for computers, once the testing is done and your test results falls within 10% of the Energy Star requirement, an additional sample will be required for testing. It does apply for imaging as well. That's if your product falls under the typical energy consumption method. If the product falls under the operational mode method for imaging equipment and the test results falls within 15% of the Energy Star requirement, then 2 additional samples will be required for testing. For battery charging systems, there are 3 samples required for testing. So normally you will have to submit, let's say, about 5 samples, and 3 will be selected at random for testing. And all 3 samples will have to meet the Energy Star requirement. For qualification testing purposes, if you intend for your product to be sold in different markets or regions, then the test voltage will have to be varied in accordance to the regions where the product will be sold or marketed as Energy Star. So for products sold in all parts of the world or all the market regions under the Energy Star program, which will include North America, Taiwan, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and Japan, the testing will have to be performed at 4 different voltage and frequency combinations. Now, if the product has a nameplate power of less than 1500 watts, the product will still have to be tested at the 4 different voltage and frequency combinations, but the voltage tolerances are 1%, and the total harmonic distortion is 2%, and the frequency tolerance is also 1%. if the product has a nameplate input power of greater than 1500, the voltages are the same, except the voltage tolerances is increased to 4%, and then the total harmonic distortions is also increased to 5%. The frequency tolerance remains the same. Now, for the Japanese market, there is the test voltage. It's 100 volts, 50 hertz, and then 60 hertz frequency. But for data being submitted to the EPA, the least efficient value will be submitted for that product. So, for example, if the product is tested at 100 volts and 50 hertz, and is less efficient at that frequency, then that value is what will be reported to the EPA. Now, the test conditions for all the major product categories are: the temperatures is 23 plus or minus 5%. The relative humidity is between 10 to 80%. And the airflow in the test room has to be less than 0.5 meters per second. For vending machines, it's for indoor vending machines, it's 23 degrees C plus or minus 45% RH, and for outdoor vending machines it's 32.2 C plus or minus 1, and then 65% plus or minus 5 RH. Now I'm just going to go over one of the atypical test specifications and method, and that will be for computers for the Energy Star requirement. Now, depending on the product category, there are 4 or 5 major program requirements that the product has to meet to be qualified as Energy Star. For computers, for example, the first requirements are for the power supply. Now, the internal power supplies for most manufacturers are always tested before the product is actually set for qualification testing. And for that, to qualify the product as Energy Star, the partner will have to submit a test data or report to the certification body to ensure that the internal power supply meets the Energy Star requirement. Now, there are 3 different efficiency levels that is internal power supplies have to meet, and they are for 20% loading, 50%, and then 100%. And the efficiencies for those loading conditions are 82, 85, and 82 respectively. And then there's also a power factor requirement for 100% loading, which is 90%. And also, for external power supplies, you want to ensure that the external power supply meets the International Efficiency Level 5 requirements, and it does have the labeling on the nameplate of that power supplies to meet the Energy Star requirement. The next set of requirements are power management requirements, which are mainly for products that do go into different energy state levels when not being used. And typically that will fall under computers, TVs, and imaging equipment. So for example, you want to ensure that you do meet all the Energy Star requirements for the sleep mode, which is one of the low energy states once equipment is not being used. And for the default display mode settings, which has a timing, that has to be set for less than 15 minutes for the Energy Star requirement. So all this, you want to ensure that all these requirements are met for the Energy Star requirement. The next set of requirements are the user information requirements. And this is to ensure that whatever energy saving settings that you have set on your product for shipping or set as a default mode to meet these Energy Star requirements, that message is conveyed to the end user so that they are aware that the default settings of the product is what it takes to meet the Energy Star requirements, and that changing those settings may result in the product not being energy efficient or not being in compliance with the Energy Star requirement. Now we're going to go over the different product categories for computers, for example, and the energy requirements or the energy measurements for each set of product categories. So for desktop, integrated desktop and notebook computers, first you have to identify which category that product falls under. Depending on the number of physical cores, the system memory, the type of graphics processing unit, and also the graphics processing unit's buffer rate, the product can fall under different categories varying from A to D. Now, once you've determined the product category, you will have to calculate the typical energy consumption for that product. And there are also allowances given. For example, if you have a large memory size for your product, for computers, for example, and if you do have a discrete graphic processing unit, or if you do have an external or an additional storage memory, there are allowances given to that can be added to the base typical energy consumption limit for your product to meet the Energy Star requirement. Now, so once we have determined, or you've determined the maximum typical energy consumption, the sleep mode, idle state, power or energy consumption of the product will have to be measured, and this is accumulated in a 5-minute period. So once you have your off mode, sleep mode, and the idle state power, the typical mode is also the typical energy consumption is calculated and compared to the maximum energy consumption that is provided by the EPA for the Energy Star program. And for that, the measured typical energy consumption has to be less than the typical energy consumption max that has been provided by the EPA for that product category. The same applies for workstations, but for workstations you actually have to perform a test to determine the maximum power consumed by the workstation by running some benchmarks, which are the spec view benchmark and the LIMPAC benchmark is run simultaneously, and then the energy or the power consumed by the workstation during the benchmark is recorded. The maximum power during the benchmark is recorded. And that is what is used to calculate the maximum power for that benchmark. And then during the test itself, you also have to measure the off mode power, sleep mode, and then the idle state power, and then calculate the typical energy consumption in terms of power for the workstations, and compare the same way you will do for the desktops or the notebooks. And the same applies for small-scale servers, but for that, all you have to do is measure the off-mode power and also the idle state power and compare it to the maximum power for off and idle state that has been provided by the EPA. And in all cases, the measured value has to be less than the max power or energy provided by the EPA. And the program requirements for thin clients is also falls under the same guidelines. You have to measure the off-mode power, the sleep mode power, and then the idle state power, and they all have to be less than excuse me. And they all have to be less than the maximum power specified by the EPA. Currently, MET is Energy Star Test Lab and CB for computers, vending machines, televisions, and battery charging systems. And we're also a CB for servers, telephones, and imaging equipment. So once testing is completed, the next phase of the qualification or certification process is actually to certify the product to say it does meet the Energy Star requirement. Now, irrespective of where the testing is performed, whether from a first or third-party test lab or from a manufacturer's lab participating in the witness program or supervised program under a CB scheme, the test report has to be submitted to the certification body to review the test report and any other information required to certify the product. Now, the certification body under this scheme or under this program will have to maintain a list of all the qualified products they've certified, including product families and the family members. The certification body then provides the partner or the manufacturer an approval to use the Energy Star label, and then submits data to the EPA using the EPA's data submission form. Now, the certification body cannot disclose publicly any information before the product introduction date provided by the manufacturer. And the certification body also reevaluates product changes and notifies the EPA of any status change in the product. Once the product has been certified and has the Energy Star label or logo on the market, the product is subjected to verification testing as long as the product still remains on the QP list on the Energy Star website or the EPA website. And the goal of this verification testing is to maintain the integrity of the program and to ensure that manufacturers are still having products out there that meet the Energy Star requirement. Under the verification testing program, the certification body is supposed to select at a minimum 10% of products per category they've certified annually. And all product families will be in the pool for selection, but only one product family member is subjected to testing per round. Now, privately labeled brands or products are treated as one product, and the selection of the product is random. But then also a random selection can also be rejected in favor of a different product. Now, during the first phase of the verification testing, the EPA intends to have about approximately 50% of the models selected at random by a CB. And the EPA also interpreted at least 50% in practice, but that could very much vary. Partners with routine failures can be subjected to additional testing. Referrals from third parties, such as consumer groups, are accepted only at a certification body's discretion. Referrals from the EPA may be limited, but there will be some referrals from the EPA for the product selection for verification testing. And in the event of any significant failures, the EPA can request an increase in the number of models selected for subsequent years. The second phase of testing after certifying the product is challenge testing. And the goal of this challenge testing from the EPA perspective is to provide a fair process for partners to challenge competitors of any energy saving claim. And for that, the CB's or the certification body's role is to set the policies in contract with the partners. So, for example, if a certification body has a contract with a manufacturer, the certification body has to specify that their product can be subjected to challenge testing and also verification testing. The certification bodies will also have to judge the validity of a challenge claim made by any partner, and will have to establish the rules on who pays for testing costs. And the certification body will have to also procure the product for testing before it notifies the challengee of any challenge of their product. And after that is done, then the certification body can initiate any challenge testing. All failures are reported to the EPA within 2 business days for challenge testing or even for verification testing. Now, for verification and challenge testing, the EPA does allow a 50% enforcement threshold. And if a product exceeds the Energy Star specification by 5% or more, it will be considered a failure. And this is in conformance with the DOE procedures for appliances. And only 1 round of testing is allowed. So, for example, if a product fails in any verification or challenge testing, it will not trigger any second round of testing by the manufacturer. And any further testing will have to come through the EPA. Now, that concludes my presentation for this webinar.
This webinar has been recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing on metlabs.com. Now, we will answer questions. If you have a question, please type it in the questions area of your control panel. For all relevant questions, we will read the question, then give a verbal answer. Here to help answer questions is Troy Franklin, Director of MET's Environmental and Energy Laboratory.
All right, first question. If I get a product safety certified, would it be necessary to get Energy Star as well? Well, first of all, Energy Star is an option. It's not a mandatory requirement, but if you want to use the Energy Star label, then you would have to have the Energy Star assessment done. And of course, during your safety certification with MET, we will provide the Energy Star evaluation upon request. Is there some changes on power supplies not needed in ES testing for notebooks?
The EPA for notebooks, most of them uses external power supplies, and external power supplies on its own as a product category has been sunset by the EPA, but they still do need to meet the International Efficiency Level 5 requirement. So what is required for Energy Star certification for external power supplies is to have the label or the nameplate stating that it does meet the International Efficiency Level 5 requirement.
It is unclear if our product needs the Energy Star or meets the Energy Star requirements. Will MET evaluate the product to determine whether it does or does not?
It's unclear if our product meets the Energy Star requirements. We can test the product to the Energy Star requirement to determine if it does meet the requirements and report the results to you. So yes, MET can evaluate the product to determine if it meets the requirement.
Okay, we have another question here. If I am a manufacturer that wants to move quickly on getting my product Energy Star certified, can I simply have MET come and witness me testing the product and then submit that data to Energy Star?
Okay, yes, MET can do that, but before we do that, there is a process that we have to follow. One, MET will have to come in and audit your lab and have you participate in our WMTL, which is a Witness Manufacturers Lab, Test Lab, or the Supervised Manufacturers Test Lab program. So in order to perform your own test, if you're not an ISO 17002 certified and recognized by the EPA, then you can do your own testing, but you will have to fall under our SMTL or the WMTL program in order to perform your own testing. And that will require us to come in, perform an initial audit, and come and also witness you do perform testing. And there's also going to be an annual audit as well, which could be yearly or bi-yearly, depending on our findings on our initial audit.
Okay, we have a couple challenge testing questions that have just come in. First, who has the authority to initiate challenge testing? Can a consumer do this, or only competitive manufacturers? And then the second part of the question, who pays for challenge testing? The manufacturer being challenged or the challenger?
The first part of the question is who initiates the challenge testing. That doesn't come from the consumer. It does come from a competitive EPA or Energy Star partner. And the second part is who pays for it. Now, that would vary depending on the certification body. Under the MET certification body scheme, the loser pays for the testing. The loser pays for the testing, which means if the challenger comes with the challenge and then we perform the test and the challengee product doesn't meet the Energy Star requirement, then the challengee pays for the testing.
Here's another question. Does the EPA have to audit the manufacturer's facility in order for them to get into the Energy Star program?
No, the EPA does not have to come in and perform any audit. Basically, you just have to fill in an application and be accepted into the Energy Star program. And you just have to abide by their rules and guidelines to participate or be a partner of Energy Star. Okay, we do have a question which says, I'm not sure if our product falls within any of the Energy Star product categories. We might review the product to determine if it needs to be tested or not. Yes, we can review your product to see if it does fall under any of the product categories.
That concludes our question and answer period. In a couple of days, we will send a follow-up email that will include a link to the recorded webinar as well as a special offer for webinar attendees. That concludes our webinar. Thank you for joining us today.